Diddy breaks silence from prison after Justin Bieber speaks out. Justin Bieber has recently found himself back in the spotlight after a long period of relative quiet, but not for the reasons many expected. While fans anticipated attention around his performances, the conversation has instead shifted toward his past and his early experiences in the music industry. Much of the renewed focus comes from his past association with Sean Diddy Combs, a relationship that dates back to when Bieber was just a teenager. Old footage and interviews have resurfaced, sparking widespread discussion online and raising questions about what life was like for a young artist navigating such a powerful environment. In one particularly notable clip from years ago, Diddy spoke about spending 48 hours with a 15-year-old Bieber, describing it as an unforgettable experience while keeping certain details private. At the time, it was presented as mentorship and industry exposure, but in hindsight, many viewers now interpret the moment differently, especially given the broader scrutiny surrounding Diddy today. At the same time, an older interview with Bieber has taken on new meaning. When asked what advice he would give his younger self, he spoke candidly about being young, innocent, and trusting everyone. He reflected on how that mindset left him vulnerable in an industry where not everyone has good intentions. Over time, he explained, those experiences led him to build emotional walls and struggle with trust. Rather than pointing to one specific person, Bieber's comments paint a broader picture of what it can feel like to grow up too quickly in an environment filled with influence, pressure, and blurred boundaries. His words highlight a common theme seen among young celebrities, learning difficult lessons about trust, identity, and self-protection at an early age. Clips from that era also show moments where Bieber appeared uncomfortable during interviews or public interactions, sometimes pushing back or trying to redirect conversations. In hindsight, these moments have fueled discussions about how young stars are treated in the spotlight and how easily vulnerability can be overlooked. As the conversation continues, it's important to separate verified information from speculation. While Justin Bieber has acknowledged challenges from his early career, his representatives have clearly stated that he is not a victim in the allegations surrounding Diddy, urging the public to keep focus on those who have made confirmed claims. Today, the story is less about a single accusation and more about a larger question. What does it mean for a teenager to grow up in an industry filled with power, pressure, and influence? And how does that shape who they become later in life? Justin Bieber, power, and growing up in the spotlight. What does it cost a child to become a superstar before they know who they are? Open on silence. Then a single archive clip, grainy footage of a teenage Justin Bieber backstage. No music yet. Hold for 3 full seconds. Every few years, the internet rediscovers someone. Not because they did something new, but because the past finally catches up to the present. This is one of those moments. Justin Bieber has been a public figure for nearly 2 decades. Most people think they know his story. The YouTube kid who became a global phenomenon, the messy tabloid years, the faith, the marriage, the comeback. But there's a layer of that story that rarely gets examined closely, what it was actually like to be that kid, in those rooms, surrounded by that much power. And recently, old footage has made a lot of people look again. Today we're not here to convict anyone. We're not here to speculate beyond what's confirmed. What we are going to do is ask a question that gets overlooked in the noise. What does it really mean to be a child growing up inside an industry built on power, access, and influence? And how does that experience shape a person for the rest of their life? The rise of a child star. Archival-style graphics. Year counters. Show the cultural context. 2008, YouTube is new, the music industry is disrupted, talent scouts are scanning the internet. To understand where Justin Bieber ended up, you have to understand where he started. In 2008, he was a 12-year-old kid in Stratford, Ontario, a small Canadian city, posting cover videos to YouTube. His mother uploaded them for family. She wasn't shopping a record deal. She was just sharing her son's talent with the world. Discovery and velocity. Then Scooter Braun found him. Braun was a young talent manager searching YouTube for a completely different artist when he stumbled across Bieber's videos. Within weeks, he had arranged a meeting with Usher. Within months, Bieber had a recording contract. Within a year, he had a debut EP on the charts. The acceleration from unknown kid to global pop star happened at a speed that no one, not his family, not his team, and certainly not Justin himself, was fully prepared for. The machinery around a young star. And here's what that actually looked like in practice. At 13, he was recording in professional studios with some of the biggest producers in the world. At 14, he was attending Grammy parties and industry events designed for adults. At 15, he was already a global brand, his image licensed, his schedule dictated by a team of managers, publicists, lawyers, and label executives. He was, in every professional sense, an adult commodity. In every human sense, he was a child. The psychology of child stardom. This is not unique to Justin Bieber. The music and film industries have a long, well-documented history of placing children in adult environments without adequate protection. The child performs, the adults profit, and the structures that should exist to safeguard a young person's development are either absent or inadequate. What makes Bieber's case worth revisiting now isn't just his fame, it's what the current cultural moment is revealing about how that environment actually worked. Transition to the Diddy connection. Among the many powerful figures who orbited the young Bieber during those early years, one name has resurfaced with particular force. Sean Combs, known to the world as Diddy, Puff Daddy, or Brother Love, was one of the most influential men in music. And for a time, he was closely connected to a 15-year-old Justin Bieber. The Diddy connection. In 2010, a clip from an interview with Sean Combs began circulating online. In it, Combs spoke about spending, in his words, 48 hours with a 15-year-old Justin Bieber. He described it as an unforgettable experience, while keeping the specifics vague. At the time, most people interpreted it as mentorship, a hip-hop mogul taking a young pop star under his wing, showing him how the industry works. Why it reads differently now. That clip has resurfaced. And in the context of 2024 and 2025, it reads very differently to a lot of people. Not because the words themselves have changed, but because our understanding of the broader context around Sean Combs has changed dramatically. Federal indictments, civil lawsuits, allegations involving coercion, abuse, and exploitation that span years. The man who once sat at the center of cultural power is now facing serious legal scrutiny. And when you look back at that clip through that lens, many viewers are asking, what exactly was a 48-hour experience with a 15-year-old boy? What is, and isn't confirmed? Let's be precise here, because precision matters. What is confirmed? Bieber and Combs had a documented public relationship during Bieber's early teen years. Old interviews and photos show them together at events. The 48 hours comment was made publicly by Combs on camera. What is not confirmed? Any specific allegation of wrongdoing involving Bieber. His representatives have been explicit. Justin Bieber is not a victim in the legal proceedings surrounding Combs. Those cases involve other individuals who have made formal allegations. The discomfort in the footage. But there's another layer to this conversation that doesn't require any accusation to be meaningful. Older footage of Bieber during interviews, particularly from when he was 14 and 15, shows a kid who sometimes seemed visibly uncomfortable. Moments where he tried to redirect a conversation. Moments where his body language shifted in ways that stood out to viewers revisiting the clips now. These aren't evidence of any specific harm, but they are part of a broader picture of what it looked like to be that young in that world. Industry power dynamics. And that's worth sitting with. Because power in the music industry, especially in the early 2000s and 2010s, operated in ways that were rarely questioned publicly. When a 14-year-old boy is in a room with adults who control his career, his income, and his public image, the dynamics are inherently unequal. That's true regardless of whether any law was broken. The question of how those dynamics affect a child, emotionally, psychologically, developmentally, is a question the industry has been slow to reckon with. What Bieber said. In an interview that has taken on new meaning in recent years, Justin Bieber was asked a simple question. What would you tell your younger self? His answer was candid in a way that surprised some viewers. He spoke about being young, innocent, and trusting everyone. He talked about how that openness, that assumption of good faith, left him vulnerable. And he described how, over time, The experiences of his early career led him to build emotional walls and struggle with trust. Interpreting his words carefully, he didn't name anyone. He didn't describe a specific incident. He spoke in the kind of generalized, reflective language that someone uses when they're describing a pattern rather than a single event, the accumulated weight of many moments rather than one defining crisis. And that in itself is telling. Because when a person looks back at their early life and says, "I trusted everyone, and that left me vulnerable," they're describing a failure not of their own judgment. They were a child, but of the systems and adults around them. The walls he built. The emotional walls Bieber referenced are well documented in the public record. By his late teens and early 20s, he was struggling visibly. There were paparazzi incidents, legal troubles, mental health struggles that played out in public. The media framed most of it as a bratty celebrity acting out. But when you place that behavior in the context of his own description of his childhood, a kid who was trusting and open, who was then hurt by that trust, who built walls to protect himself, a different picture emerges. Not of a troubled young man making bad choices, but of someone coping, imperfectly, with damage that was done to him before he had the tools to protect himself. Bieber today. Today, Justin Bieber is 30 years old. He's been largely absent from the public eye in recent years, by his own choice. He has spoken openly about his faith, his marriage to Hailey Baldwin, and his ongoing mental health journey. In 2020, he released a documentary that addressed many of the darker chapters of his life with a degree of honesty that was, at times, striking. He is, by most accounts, someone who has done real work to understand his past and move forward from it. But the past, as this moment reminds us, doesn't disappear just because you've made peace with it. The pattern, not the person. What Bieber's story illustrates, and this is crucial, is not unique to him. It is a pattern. Young artists, particularly those who become famous as children or teenagers, are routinely placed in environments where the adults around them have enormous power and often conflicting interests. The label wants the album. The manager wants the commission. The publicist wants the press. The industry event wants the presence. Nobody in that room is asking, is this child okay? Is this environment safe? What does this young person actually need? The bigger question. Stepping back. So, where does that leave us? The internet has spent weeks dissecting clips, reading between lines, and constructing theories. Some of that is understandable curiosity. Some of it crosses into speculation that doesn't serve anyone, especially not the people who have made verified, formal allegations that deserve to be centered in this conversation. What the story actually is. The story here is not about one accusation or one clip or one relationship. The story is systemic. It's about an industry that has, for decades, placed enormous value on young talent and very little institutional protection around young people. It's about the ways that power concentrates around fame and how that concentration can distort every relationship a young person has, with adults, with trust, with themselves. Justin Bieber is a data point in that story.
Not the whole story.
Not even the most important part of it. But a data point worth examining honestly. What responsible attention looks like. If this moment teaches us anything, it should be this. When we celebrate young stars, we have a collective responsibility to ask harder questions about the environments we're celebrating. When a 15-year-old is the most famous person in the world, who is looking out for him? When a teenager says, years later, that he trusted everyone and it left him vulnerable, who are we holding accountable for that vulnerability? These are not rhetorical questions. They have answers. And those answers require us to look at not just individual bad actors, but the structures that allowed them to operate. Justin Bieber is not a symbol. He's a person, one who has had to grow up, make sense of his past, and figure out who he is on the other side of an extraordinary and often brutal experience. Whatever conclusions you draw from the clips and the interviews and the headlines, keep that in mind. Behind every piece of archival footage is a kid who didn't know yet what he didn't know. And that's the part of the story that's easiest to forget and most important to remember.